All right, drivers, how you doing out there? We have a bit of a different topic to discuss, and this one might just tick some folks off. But it needs saying. Why the hell are truckers still getting fired or suspended for weed in 2025, even in states where it's legal?
Yeah, a puff or two of hooch or a gummy on your day off and potentially you're out of the truck. Your CDL might be lost or suspended, and you might get placed in the SAP program faster than you can say random test. For those that don't know, SAP stands for Substance Abuse Professional Program, which is regulated by the Department of Transportation. The SAP program is designed to help safety-sensitive employees, particularly those in the transportation industry and more specifically truck drivers, return to work after violating DOT drug and alcohol regulations.
Today, we're going to tell you the real story, not just about failed tests, but why weed was outlawed in the first place, who was behind it, and how they crushed its cousin, the hemp plant, before it could change the world. First things first, a quick refresher is needed. Just because weed's legal in your state don't mean squat to the federal government. It's still a big no-no for CDL holders, and a positive test could cripple your career.
You've got that right, Jim. The DOT and FMCSA, they follow federal law, and according to federal law, marijuana is still listed as a Schedule I drug, which puts it into the very same category as heroin, which in my opinion should be mind-boggling and ludicrous to anyone that reviews the history, medical, and scientific evidence that supports the healthy use of cannabis. So far, 46 of our 50 states, the District of Columbia, and 3 U.S. territories have all approved some form of cannabis for medicinal use. In addition to that, 24 states have fully legalized cannabis for recreational use. Medical marijuana has shown big-time potential benefits in treating a variety of conditions, including chronic pain, nausea, and certain neurological disorders. It has been a godsend to cancer patients and is also used to help with sleep disorders, anxiety, and conditions like Crohn's disease.
Yeah, but don't forget, as a CDL licensed driver, if you test positive for THC, even from that weekend brownie, you're done. Doesn't matter if you were stone cold sober behind the wheel. Now here's the part they didn't teach you in school and kept buried deep in the old history book. Cannabis and its cousin the hemp plant were never an issue here in the United States, or anywhere else for that matter. Several founding fathers, including George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, were known to cultivate hemp on their plantations. The Virginia Assembly even required farmers to grow hemp in 1619. However, the cannabis grown during this period primarily consisted of industrial hemp, which has very low levels of THC, which is the psychoactive compound that causes a high. The primary use of hemp during this era was for industrial purposes. Its fibers were crucial for crafting rope, canvas, sails for ships, and other textile products. Hemp was also used in the production of paper, with Benjamin Franklin reportedly owning a hemp paper mill. Another use of hemp was for its oil, which was extracted for use in varnishes and paints.
Cannabis consumption, including smoking, has a long history with evidence that suggests cannabis was smoked for its psychoactive effects as early as 500 BCE in Central Asia, which is about 2,500 years ago. It became more widely adopted in the West in the late 19th century, particularly within artistic and intellectual circles.
The popularity of smoking cannabis surged again in the 1920s and 1930s during Prohibition. Weed wasn't a big deal back then, and folks also grew and used hemp for rope, ship sails, clothes, even medicine. The real catalyst to the demise of cannabis in the United States was the end of Prohibition in 1933. With alcohol prohibition repealed, law enforcement agencies like the Federal Bureau of Narcotics faced a need for a new target to justify their existence and maintain funding. Cannabis became a convenient target. The government's campaign to outlaw marijuana was led by Harry Anslinger, who was the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and was mainly fueled by racism as he linked cannabis to Mexican immigrants and black communities, exploiting societal fears and prejudices during the Great Depression. Anslinger, in particular, utilized sensationalized claims and misinformation. A movie titled Reefer Madness was used by the media to portray marijuana as a dangerous drug causing promiscuity amongst teens, violence, suicide, and other social ills, which greatly influenced public opinion and lawmakers. Here is one of those fun facts for you. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, there has never ever been a documented or recorded death attributed to THC overdose in the United States.
The truth of the matter is that big industry, along with owners of some huge companies, started sweating when hemp looked like it was about to take off. At the top of that lobbying list to outlaw cannabis and hemp were the makers of liquor and beer. That only stands to reason because the makers of alcoholic products were back in business with Prohibition ended. Here's a fun fact for you. In April 1933, the Budweiser Clydesdales delivered a case of beer to President Franklin D. Roosevelt at the White House to celebrate the end of Prohibition.
Yeah, cannabis and hemp were ganged up on by the makers of alcohol and beer. But some other big industry leaders also viewed cannabis as a threat to their pocketbook and wanted them out of the picture. William Randolph Hearst, the newspaper tycoon, owned a ton of timberland. He didn't want the much cheaper hemp plant making better paper than what he was producing. So he paid lobbyists to sway opinion. DuPont Chemical Company was another that wanted to see the cannabis and hemp plant outlawed. At the time, they just dropped their new plastic and synthetic fibers, and hemp threatened to blow it out of the water with a better product. They also paid lobbyists to sway opinion. And you are dead on about the alcohol industry being at the top of the list, just getting back on their feet after Prohibition. Last thing they wanted was folks smoking instead of drinking. So what did they all do? They paid off politicians, ran racist scare campaigns, and pushed lies saying weed made people violent, crazy, and lazy. It was all BS. Enter Harry Anslinger, the first head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, racist as hell and hungry for power. He made it his mission to ban cannabis completely. And in comes the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. Didn't ban weed outright, it just taxed it so high nobody could afford to grow or sell it legally. If you didn't pay the tax, you could face a $2,000 fine and up to 5 years in federal prison. Now, $2,000 might not sound like much, but in 1937, that's like $45,000 today. The whole thing was a setup. The tax stamp system was a trap. You couldn't get the stamp unless you had weed. But if you had weed without the stamp, boom, it was a felony.
Now, hemp, which is a cousin of the cannabis plant but is non-psychoactive, meaning that you can't get high off it, was swept up in the ban too. That plant could have changed America. You can make clothing, paper, food, concrete, plastic, fuel, all from hemp. It grows like a weed and doesn't need pesticides. But nope, DuPont didn't want it killing their new nylon fabric. Hearst didn't want it killing his paper business, so they all jumped in to kill it off. Here's where it gets wild. In early 1941, Henry freaking Ford built a car made from hemp plastic. That sucker was lighter than steel, stronger than metal, and ran on hemp ethanol fuel, not gasoline. There's a famous video of Ford hitting the door panel with an axe, and the thing bounced off with no damage to the car. Compared to other cars back then, Ford's hemp car was stronger, more fuel efficient, and could have kicked off a whole new era of bio-based vehicles.
But once again, oil companies, steel giants, and even government officials like Anslinger weren't having it. They shut it down. Too much money to lose. So the hemp car got buried and forgotten. So here we are in 2025. Weed is fully legal in half the country, and 46 of 50 states have some form of legalized medicinal marijuana, but truckers are still getting fired, blacklisted, and pushed into SAP rehab programs for touching the stuff.
Watch out for that CBD too. It will give you a positive test. And about that supposedly THC-free oil they sell at the truck stops, it's still got trace amounts of THC, enough to fail a DOT drug test.
And no one tells you that even secondhand smoke or legal edibles from a weekend cookout can show up in your system days later.
It ain't about safety anymore. It's about a system that never got updated, still running off lies from 90 years ago. Look, we ain't lawyers. We're just truckers who read a little deeper. But here's what our thoughts are. Stay away from weed and CBD if you want to keep your CDL, and don't trust what's legal at the state level. DOT don't care. If you happen to test positive, request a split sample right away. And if you're fighting it, get everything in writing. And remember, the laws ain't based on science. They're based on fear, racism, and profit from 100 years ago. You know what's sad? That Henry Ford tried to build a cleaner future and big money crushed it, just like they crushed hemp and cannabis.
And now we're still paying for it. Drivers losing their jobs, their careers, because of outdated laws that should have been repealed decades ago. If you found this information helpful, please share it with a fellow driver. Also, please remember to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell as hard as you can. Take care, my friend.
Stay safe out there. Keep that left door closed and the shiny side up, whether the law makes sense or not. Catch y'all next time.